Mental health and the entrepreneur. We're here with Mike Couros and Dr. Jacqui Fleury talking about some solutions in this segment of how to deal with those issues that we've identified in the first part. So maybe I'll come back to you, Dr. Fleury. When we look at the people that you're treating and the common thread that you see, we've identified what we might have happen and be able to identify what those differences are that are affecting us in our day-to-day life. What do you start recommending, and how do you tell people some of the solutions and that there is hope at the end of all this?
Right. I think the most important message that I want people to take away is the understanding that oftentimes what we recognize or what we label as anxiety and depression and brain fog and other mental health related symptoms can be a result of other things going on in their bodies. And so I have spent many, many years working with what I call modifiable factors, health factors. So that can range anywhere from, like I say, gut health, so symptoms like constipation, diarrhea, alternating heartburn, headaches, migraines, skin issues. Like, these are all physical symptoms, but they oftentimes there will be a link to emotional symptoms or things like brain fog or irritability, mood swings, those sorts of things. So when we use the term anxiety and depression, oftentimes that's an umbrella description to describe a lot of other things that could be going on. So ultimately, what I want people to know is that as they start to recognize the connection between what's going on in their physical body and what's potentially going on in their brain, that they can modify their mental symptoms by fixing the physical.
So it's not always something that you ate that may have affected the gut instincts, if you will, and those side effects. There's external factors that your world, and it may lead to alcohol or weight gain, things like that. Is there a pathway that, if I am experiencing something like that, is that typically referred to by your own general practitioner, your physician, family physician, that would say these are some things that you need to address?
Well, oftentimes the, let's say insomnia, or just feeling like you're just generally not coping, or if you're finding yourself crying all the time or flying off the handle, or just really not finding that you're interested in much in life, that will oftentimes take a person to their family doctor. And the obvious rule outs happen, things like general blood work, and sometimes lifestyle screening, that sort of thing will happen. Unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't get the person to the end result that they're looking for, which is some solutions or some results, some positive results. And certainly medication is a very, very important and a very viable option. And sometimes that's just enough for a person, and sometimes there's other cofactors or comorbidities that are going on with that person that don't typically resolve just with medication. And so those are oftentimes the population that I work with. So the person who, is maybe on a medication for depression, but they still have the gut stuff, they still have the skin stuff, they still find that they, feel moody throughout the month, or that they still feel like they're, they might be feeling a little better, but they're still not coping as well as they could. So I really just want people to understand that as they dial in their physical symptoms, oftentimes their emotional well-being will follow suit.
Do you see, Mike, in your network and the work that you do with a lot of these types of people, do you see some examples of hope and success stories that you could share in terms of someone was going through a rough time and happened to identify it and change direction and improve their life after recognizing it?
And what I do for my regular work basically is I deal with a lot of A-type personalities. So I'm tied into the business community in Saskatoon. And you would be surprised at how many gentlemen and ladies run into the problem of mental health issues. And typically the same thing that got them to start the business is the same thing that actually helps them conquer the mental health issues. It's a desire, It's an understanding. It's an acknowledgement that the problem exists to begin with. And I think that when you have that resolve, you can actually start making those changes in your life. And they're gradual. Sometimes it takes months or even years to make those changes, but the changes can be done. So there's a lot of success stories out there of people that were pretty desperate in their businesses that actually managed to turn it around and do very, very well for themselves, and managed to do it with the help of family, friends, professionals, etc. One thing that we like to talk about a lot is that you're not alone. There are people you can talk to about this, and whether it be friends or confidants or professionals, that's exactly where you need to start, because they can see things in a way that, in a manner that you may not be able to see. So that's where we like to start ultimately, and it's really, really important in my life that you have a very, very strong social network of people that are fair-minded and honest and brutally truthful with you, and that'll help you a lot as well. And I think that's been sort of the reason for the success of a lot of these people.
Where do we find help, I guess, in terms of not just the entrepreneur, but there are people that want to be and or maybe employees and want to branch out, take an idea that they have. Where would they go for help if they've identified and want to take a next step? What would they do?
Well, yeah, starting with your doctor for sure is a good place to start, just to make sure that, especially if you are feeling desperate, oftentimes medication can save your life. And from there, being able to explore opportunities or resources where people can help you make that connection between, the choices that you make. I mean, Mike and I always joke about, the ways in which certain foods or certain beverages make us feel, and we can usually sense that in each other. Like, if Mike's had pizza, we can tell because he's irritable the next day or he's not coping, right?
That's a true story.
Yeah.
If
So,
I have pizza, it knocks me out.
Yeah, but he didn't realize that until we identified that, and that's the sort of thing that I think as you dial in and realize more specifically how your environment affects you, then you modify your environment. So there's lots of help available along that line. So starting with your doctor and then seeking out mentorship, people who understand the mind-body connection, functional medicine practitioners, naturopathic doctors, nutritionists, life coaches, fitness consultants. Like, there's a plethora of options available, but just being able to find that, I guess, that resource that most aligns with what you feel is going to help you the most.
When we have a number of your presentations, I've seen a couple of times now, and it's interesting just to watch the crowd after I've seen the first one. People will pull out their phone and start typing things that they've seen, or take pictures of the slides that you have, making notes about things that you've said. A lot of head nodding in agreement with those sometimes very brutal facts that you're bringing forward. I really commend that, and I thank you for pushing that issue. I think what we're going to see is a lot more effort, and through programs like this and dialogue. What are some next steps in your world, what you're doing? Where are you going and spreading this message and inviting people to come forward?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we've got a keynote with Mental Health Entrepreneur, which is actually seeming to catch on. We've had a number of requests that we actually do that for a number of different groups, and I think that's the starting point. I think the starting point, like in every problem, is acknowledging that the problem actually exists, and then we're big advocates, of course, of people contacting their family physicians, maybe getting in to see a psychologist if it's paid for by the group benefits. Maybe if it isn't paid for by the group benefits, just getting to see somebody and talking about it. It's not an embarrassing thing. We all, many of us struggle through mental health issues. It should be as common as having a rash, basically. It should be thought of in that same manner. But because of the stigma that's been associated for so many years, we haven't gone to that point yet. But people like Michael Landsberg, who basically is the sick but not weak hashtag, or sick not weak hashtag. It's been great spreading the message across Canada through TSN, through his programming. So I think that we're making a movement on it. It hasn't gotten to where it needs to be yet. but I think that awareness of it, we too see those people in the audiences that are nodding their heads. Some of them are visibly shaking because they're experiencing it and they're not talking to people. And we may be the first contact they've had that basically say, hey, listen, this is okay. This happens to a lot of different people. The best thing you can do right now is go out and find that help. And Dr. Jacqui talks a lot about making sure your gut health as well. We do a segment on gut health, or Dr. Jacqui does, which is really, really informational. It's fantastic about how much that affects the way you think. If your gut's not healthy, your brain might not be. Mm-hmm. So, there's lots of places to go with this. So we just hope that if people see this, they get a hold of us. We can we keynote this presentation around Saskatchewan, and it's been very successful so far. And it's a good way to start the conversation.
Well, I champion you both for your efforts in doing this and bringing it to the forefront and sharing it with the wider audience. I want to thank you both for making time today, and wish you the best of success and health, mental and physical, and we'll see you on the road.
Thanks, Randy.
Good. Stay with us. We'll be right back.